Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. I'm your host, Maggie Colella, here with Reverend John Teague.
Yes, love a good Reverend reference. Yeah. How are you, Maggie?
I'm great, yeah. Hey, this is one of our last episodes of the semester.
Sad.
Oh, yes,
know.
but that means summer is right around the corner. What's
That's
something you're looking forward to this summer?
I'm looking forward to going on vacation with my family. We're going with my parents and my brother and sister-in-law out west to Yellowstone and Grand Tetons.
What animal are you most hoping to see?
I haven't even thought about that. I would like to see, are there moose
Yes.
in Yellowstone?
Yes.
Maybe. I think that would be cool.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I saw a bald eagle in Yellowstone.
Really?
Yeah, but I was not excited about it. Everyone in the car was like, I can't believe we saw a bald eagle. And I just thought, what was the big deal with that?
National
I just
bird.
didn't get it.
America.
Yeah.
Could you hear it screeching?
No.
No.
Yeah. Saw lots of bears. I hope you see lots of bears.
Yeah, that was another one I was thinking about. I'd like to see a grizzly bear.
Yeah. Do you want to get
But
close?
Definitely not
Not
close.
so much.
No. I was reading about that last night, actually, about like what to do if a grizzly bear charges you.
It's terrifying. I actually have a vivid memory of being in a tiny house the night before we were driving into Yellowstone. And I thought that night, when everyone else was asleep, would be a good time to start Googling grizzly
What
bear
happens?
encounters. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
gosh.
just started panicking. And I was literally just like, Jake, we can't go anymore. But I powered through and we had bear spray.
That's great.
Hey, let's celebrate a few things in our church family. The men's Sixer is over. How did that go? What was good about it?
Man, I really enjoyed the Sixer Volume 1, and that just means that there's going to be volumes that will come after that. We've got one planned for this fall, but for the 25 to 30 or so guys that got to complete the Sixer, that was really cool. We were able to, I think, collect some shared language around who God has called us to be as men. And one of the things that I enjoyed about it was after the teaching time, just breaking off into groups and talking with guys about this, like what's hard, what's working, what does this look like in your life? You know, what does it look like to lead courageously or accept responsibility? What does it look like to reject passivity? So we had some common language now that we can all use. And so I just really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. I love that. And that reminds me of our women's Bible studies also just finished. And 30 or so women were looking through the book of Colossians and learning more about who Jesus is. And I just love to celebrate that. But I also love celebrating the 10 women who facilitated those studies and used their gifts to serve the women in our church. And I just love that they were all, just part of building up the body and part of serving those women. I just thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah. My wife went to the Monday night Bible study and she really enjoyed that and was glad that there was an evening offering.
Yeah.
Because we don't always have that opportunity. And so for those moms or women who couldn't get out, during the day, like my wife, she loved it.
That's great. So great. And also for the men who missed the Sixer, weren't able to go for whatever reason, you can catch all those sessions on our weekly newsletter if you want to go back and watch those. Get in the loop on that.
And let me add to that, for those guys who were a part of the Sixer, enjoyed thinking through that content, or you weren't a part of it, but you'd love to talk more about that and learn about that. Glenn Church is going to start meeting with a group of men on Wednesday mornings starting May 7th at 6:30 in the morning at the ministry center. And so it's the same time as the Sixer was, same day, same time, same place. And they're going to be talking through and unpacking some of those themes. And so if you missed that, or you just want to keep digging into that would be a great place for you to get around some other men and do that.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I feel like with something like that, the content is so good and it can just be like, okay, got it. And then if you are not very careful and slow to continue applying it to your life and continue kind of making those changes, then it can just kind of go in one ear and out the other. So I just think it's great to continue that conversation, continue applying it so that we can be doers of his word and not just hearers.
Yes.
All right, you ready to transition to the sermon?
Yeah, but should we talk about your coffee mug first that's
Yes.
on the table?
It's so great.
It's so great.
Hey, do you think we really landed on the moon?
I totally think we landed on the moon. Are you a conspiracy theorist?
I am not, but I do know some people strongly believe that we did not.
Yeah, well,
I'm a conspiracy empathizer. Like, is that a thing? Like,
I'm
whenever
sure there is a
somebody, I
thing.
have a lot of dear friends who are conspiracy theorists.
Yes.
And when they explain it to me, I'm like, I see
Like,
it. I totally get why you think that.
yeah.
I don't personally, but I totally understand.
Yeah, okay. But the mug is great.
Yes, here it says Jake. One of my good friends bought this for Jake's birthday one year.
That's such a great gift. Like, and that was a thrift store find,
Yeah,
right?
she just found it at Goodwill, and you just can't not buy this for Jake if you find this at Goodwill. So,
Kennedy Space Center, and
yeah.
it's got his name on it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Gosh,
and
I
for
love
some
that.
reason, this is one of like our favorite mugs. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing very aesthetically pleasing about it, but we love to grab this
I
one.
would love that mug. Yes.
Oh man! All right, now are you ready
Sure,
to
let's do
transition
it.
to the sermon?
Great.
All right, on Sunday you shared from this passage in Numbers 13 and 14. Can you just give us like a brief overview of what's going on in this passage and what happened in this passage?
Yeah, so the children of Israel, they're on their way from Egypt, from 400 years of slavery in Egypt. God has rescued them in a miraculous way, and now they're in the wilderness, and they've been at Sinai for a year. And Mount Sinai, that was where Moses came down with the tablets, and the law. And they've been camped out at Sinai for a year. Now they've moved toward the promised land. They're 20 miles outside of Jerusalem, and they've got a decision to make because the Lord has told Moses to send spies into the land to kind of get a feel for, what are they going to face when they get there. And they come back with a report that ends up being pretty divisive, and it causes a lot of problems for the children of Israel, and especially the older generation that is scared to go into the promised land because of all these giants and obstacles and fortified cities. And yet there were some who believed that God would go with them and help them and would give them the land he told them he was going to give them. So that's kind of what's going on here.
Yeah. And so that moment where they're kind of faced with that crossroads, that decision to either believe and trust God and push forward into the challenges and into the obstacles, but obey, or to draw back, that you called like a Kadesh moment, because they're near Kadesh Barnea.
Yes.
And it's just kind of this crossroads moment. And so we talked about how we too will face moments like that, where we kind of are at this crossroads and we feel the Lord drawing us, calling us to something, but we also see the obstacles that's going to entail. And we have a choice to make. We can believe God will be with us and we can accept that challenge and move forward in obedience, or we can take the easy way out and draw away in fear. And so much of what we do in that moment depends on what we believe about God. And so if we want to be a church family, and we do want to be a church family who is quick to obey God, and we are brave, and we are not afraid of doing hard things if that's where God is calling us. If we want to be those kind of people, what are some of the things we need to be believing about who God is?
Well, this kind of ties back into, and this was, I think, one of the reasons the Lord led us here right after Easter, is this ties into his promises and who he is and who he has said that he will be for us. He will be with us. And so if we look at something that we feel like the Lord has led us toward, and it's like, no, that looks impossible, that seems scary, we need to remember that God has promised, I will be with you. I will go with you into that. And so that would be one thing that we need to believe about God.
I think the promise of his presence, we talked about this on the podcast last week, but like knowing he will be with me changes everything. And I just remember when I was probably like 17 or 18, that's like a season in your life where you're making a lot of big decisions that seem like they are going to affect your life, because they are. Like those, that's just like a very transitional time in life. And I remember somebody gave me a book. It's called Just Do Something by Kevin DeYoung. And the like truths from that book, I still recall to this day. And so for parents or anyone like in a really transitional season, or you have a child in that season, I highly recommend this book, because it really helps just shape like, because of who God is, how do we make big decisions like that when we're at those crossroads moments? And I just remember there's a line in the book where it's just like, okay, so often you're going to have these like, here's option A and here's option B. And if both of those are like moral, like good and wise, and you've weighed them, then like you can kind of just do something, this is in the name of the book, knowing like God will be with me. So I think there's like two types of decisions that we can be faced with. We can be faced with a decision that like both options are godly, and we can trust like, you know what, I don't have to toil so much over this decision because either way God will be with me, so it's going to be okay. But then there's those moments where like God is clearly leading you to A or B, and it's in those moments where we have to be very discerning and prayerful about like where God is leading. So talk to me about when you're faced with a decision like that and you're like, okay, it's A or it's B, and I sense that I need to discern which one God is leading me to. How do you start to discern and feel out which way his voice is leading you?
Well, I'd love to say there's like a real easy system, and if you just follow these 3 steps, will lead you to God's will. This will lead you to an easy decision-making process. But I think it starts with prayer, and not just praying once. I mean, there needs to be a season of prayer if this is a big decision, you know, and you need to pray about this quite a bit. You need to ask the Lord to lead you, and you need to be able to listen and journal and write down the things that you sense the Lord is speaking to you. And then you need to find trusted people that you know that know you well, but also love the Lord and have good discernment and aren't going to tell you to like go do something that's contrary to God's word. And that you bring them into the loop on this, because this is how God often works. He kind of triangulates. He might use his word, a passage in his word. He might use an impression from the Spirit on you as you're praying and listening, and he might use someone else and a word from them that kind of triangulates and helps you be able to get a bearing on what it is that God's leading you into. I think you look for where there is peace, because often when there is a peace, you know that that's kind of where the Lord's leading. And if every time you think about something, you don't have peace about it, that's a good check that that it might not be the thing, or it may be that there's something in the way that the Lord's wanting to do first, you know. Those are some of the things that I think about. I have so many thoughts, but one of them is like, let's kind of tease out this idea of like having peace about something. Okay. So I agree. And I know sometimes my flesh plays tricks on me, and I convince myself I definitely have peace about this easy way out. Like, this feels comfortable and easy. I'll go back to Egypt. I have a lot of peace about being a slave again, right? Like our flesh and the enemy can kind of work together to convince us that something is giving us peace when really it's just the easy way out. And so I just think that there's like a category for like questioning our peace in the right and in a godly way. Like, don't just like assume that because something feels easy that's the same as having a peace from the Lord about it. What would you add to that? I think that's really good, and you basically just dismantled my answer to your question. No, I did not. So I think that actually just brilliantly illustrates that there's no like, this is not a cookie cutter thing, right? And even like as we read this story, we can't just be like, okay, we have this story here in the Bible, so that means like we should always charge forward to face, the giants, because and to not do that would be sinful and displeasing to God. And I think that would probably be an inaccurate that we shouldn't apply it that way just blanketly. We should say, no, we need to have an understanding of what the Lord's leading us into, right? And if he is leading us into it, then we can do it with courage, knowing he's going to be with us, right? So to your point, sometimes, like the more peaceful thing that we can think about is just being like, is just taking the easy way,
Yes.
or the quick way, the
Yes.
efficient way. And that, I said this on Sunday in the sermon, but unbelief can sometimes dress itself up. It puts on costumes and it looks good and right. And we don't realize that that's unbelief wearing that costume of peace.
Yes.
That's unbelief that's wearing that costume of just like common sense. It just makes sense for me to do this.
Yeah.
Like that just makes a ton of sense. And it might be that that's the thing you have to do, but it might be unbelief. And so you have to dig more. You have to dig deeper especially in some situations. You have to, like, I wonder if perhaps this just looks good because I won't have to trust God in this.
Yep. Yeah. When you were talking, it reminded me, I have some dear friends who are missionaries in India. So what I'm about to describe to you about them will check out, because they have given their lives to be missionaries in a really difficult place.
Yeah.
And their posture is pretty much, and sometimes it has frustrated me, but their posture is pretty much, if they're presented with something that is challenging or outlandish or difficult, their posture is to assume that that's God's will. And they're like, yeah, we'll go for it. And they always lean into the hard and challenging thing. And right or wrong, I just think we all could borrow from that level of courageous faith that just instead of assuming, oh, this is challenging and hard, it must not be God's will. What if we kind of assume the opposite of this is challenging and hard, maybe that is what the Lord is inviting me into, because it will require faith. And it's exactly those type of things that make God look amazing when he just gets to show off his faithfulness and his bigness through our weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, the children of Israel in Numbers 14, it kind of records their response to the spies' report of the land and the fortified cities and all the different people who lived there, the giant people who lived there. They're saying things like, God has led us out here to kill us. And so that right there should just be a big red flag. Like, wait a second, is that what God is trying to do? Is he luring you out into something to then crush you? Is that what God's up to? I don't think so. That doesn't seem to be the character of God, who just back in Exodus 19, before he gave them the law at Sinai, where they had been for a year before this scene in Numbers, he's like, hey, before I even tell you the law, I just want to remind you that you were slaves in Egypt, and I swooped in like an eagle, and I plucked you out of that situation, and I carried you on eagle's wings because you are my treasured possession. You belong to me, and so and you are a treasure. I'm going to take care of you. But in the heat of the moment, they forgot all that, and that's something we should think about. We should take that as a warning. We might respond like that too, and they were really upset. They raised a loud cry. This is Numbers 14:1. They raised a loud cry. They wept that night. They were really afraid. And that's pretty human, right? They were really afraid. And then they grumbled against their leaders. And then they felt like the leaders were being foolish. And, Moses and Aaron just trying to do what the Lord has said and try to follow his will toward the place he's told them that he's going to give them. And then their fear kind of took over, and now they've convinced themselves that they need better leaders and they need to go back into the past because the future feels really scary. So I just think sometimes fear can be one of those costumes.
Yes. Yeah, and I think so much of what God wants to do in us through these types of decisions or these types of seasons where we're in the middle of the challenge or we're questioning why did you lead me here? What was your plan in this?
Yes.
Is this why you led me here for this? In all of that, I think so much of it is teaching us did I follow God's voice and did I listen to him because I had my hope in a certain outcome that I assumed he would give me?
Yeah.
Or do I just trust God regardless of the outcome? And I trust that this might play out differently than I thought this was going to go, and he is still good and he's still with me. Because I think so often we're like, all right, God, I made this decision, I followed you here, now make it good. Now I expect that things will just have like a bow on them and it will work out the way I thought it would, and this makes sense to us. We're like, surely this will be God's plan. It's such a good plan that we have, and it doesn't always go like we think, but like, instead of assuming like, okay, that was in vain, or like God left me, I guess I'll try again and figure this out again, seeing the good in just that you followed his voice, you were obedient, you have no clue what this did in you or in other people, but that there's still so much value in just you learning to listen to his voice, whether it turned out like you thought or not. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes total sense, and I think you said that really well. And I'm just thinking too, in this whole conversation, like, we can talk about big decisions and direction in life, and that applies. I think that belongs in this conversation. Then there's just like the everyday little things, right? Where like it's not the big thing of like, go to the land to which I've called you. It might just be like, hold your tongue, like follow this command that says, don't let any unwholesome word come out of your mouth. Like, if maybe that's the land that God's calling you to, is to just obey that. And in that moment, you've got a decision to make. If I don't come out with and unleash the things that are in me that I want to say, will he meet me there? Will he take care of me? If I hold my tongue and I obey him and I step into that, will it be okay? Will I still be okay? Or will I end up getting crushed?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's so good, because I think if we are people who are very well practiced in listening to and seeking God's voice in the millions of little everyday decisions, then when we are faced with that big, do I move? Do I take this job? Like those type decisions, then we are very comfortable and familiar with discerning God's voice. But I think we get frustrated when we have put no effort into discerning God's voice, or being sensitive to his leading, or being quick to obey those little nudges from the Spirit. When we've not done that, and then all of a sudden I'm faced with a big decision, now I really don't know how to hear God's voice. Like, I haven't practiced hearing him. I don't really know what his voice sounds like. But if we daily, moment by moment, are like living in his word, so we know what his voice sounds like in his word, and we know it when we hear it, and we're quick to obey, and we're sensitive to his nudges, and we're bold to just like do the thing he's leading us into, then when we're faced with that big decision, we're like, yeah, I know what his voice sounds like. I hear it every moment. And that's the kind of church family I want to be personally, and I want to see that growing more and more in us, is just like such a intimacy with the Lord, to hear his voice, to know what it sounds like, and to be so quick to obey, because we've proved him over and over. We've obeyed in like a million little moments, and so it's really easy to obey in this big thing that he's calling me to.
Yeah. And I need that. I need to be a part of that, because I need folks who are around me that I know are listening to the Lord and will encourage me when he puts something on their heart, or that will correct me when I am out of bounds, and help me discern the Lord. I need that. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I was just thinking a moment ago about James chapter 1, and I may have alluded to this in one of the services on Sunday, but James 1:12 says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." I just think that, and there are other places in Scripture that also talk about just a testing of our faith. Earlier in James, he's talking about that, the testing of your faith. It produces steadfastness, and sometimes these big things like the reports of the giants and the fortified cities and the challenges that loom large, it's a test of our faith. And the point isn't to like fail us and crush us. it's to strengthen us.
Yes.
You know, I remember hearing somebody say one time that which is tested can be trusted. And so you just think about the things that you really want to be tested, right? Like, we don't really want our faith to be tested, right? Because that sounds hard. But you want pilots who fly airplanes to be tested a lot, right? Yeah. Test the junk out of them, you know, like you want the meat that you're going to eat to be tested, right? For like bacteria and all those kinds of things, right? Like, there are things you definitely want to be tested. And because then it identifies where the weaknesses or the problems are so that they can be strengthened. Yes. And so the testing of our faith, and whether that is in maybe a decision that seems really scary, or maybe in like just a relational issue that you need to step into, like those things are testing our faith, and they're meant to make our faith in God stronger, to trust him. And how we react to those situations are that, I think this get back to the point of the sermon. It's like they are reflections of, or the outworkings of, what we think about God. Yep. Is God good enough to meet me there if I say yes? Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the heart of this message, and what I want everyone to kind of continue processing after you listen to this podcast is like, what do I believe about God? Who do I believe he really is? What do I believe about his will? What do I believe about where he's leading me? Just asking yourself some of those questions. I think it's also helpful relationally to think through some of the people closest to you, like, or the friends, like, what do you believe about them? Are there any lies you might be believing about them? And I just know I've had some really hard but sweet conversations with friends, just coming to them and being like, hey, this is what I'm believing about you. I think it might be a lie. Can you help me? Yeah. And they help me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see it clearly now. And the thing with that is, even after that lie is corrected in that friendship, I have to choose to keep believing the truth. Yes. Because everything in my flesh and the enemy will want to bring me back down into that lie. Yeah. Because I have trained myself to believe that lie about them, and then therefore to see everything they do through that lie, and then therefore to speak about them through the lens of that lie, and to my actions in that friendship reflect that lie I'm believing about them. Yeah. And so the enemy in my flesh want to bring me back into that. And so I have to choose, after they have repaired that and we've restored that and they've spoken the truth, I have to choose to keep believing that. And I just know for the last year I have like a really sweet friendship, and for the last year there've just been like so many opportunities for me to go back into believing the lie. But I have chosen time and time again, no, I'm going to believe the truth about this person. And it has been such a relief and such a joy and just so beautiful to like live in that truth and to take this person at their word and to believe the best about them. And the same, all of that applies to God too. Like we know who he is, and we have to day by day keep believing the truth and not allow the enemy and our flesh to pull us back into those lies that we're tempted to believe. Yeah. Trust the Spirit of truth. That's what Jesus called the Holy Spirit. Yes. The Spirit of truth. Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, we will be back eventually this summer, but we're signing off for a little bit, and we just really appreciate you guys listening. Like, I feel like we have such a sweet audience. Y'all are great at encouraging us. So we'll be back in a few weeks. Thanks for listening. See ya.